Okay, hi everyone, I'm Virginia. I'm just going to bring up the presentation. Let me just share my screen. Okay, cool. Can everyone see my presentation? Yes, thumbs up or in the chat. Yes, perfect. Fantastic. Thank you so much for being here today and spending the next 20 to 40 minutes, hopefully, learning something new or maybe adding to some stuff that you already know. So today we're going to talk about presentations and the framework prepare, practice, and perform. So who am I? I'm Virginia Chachati, and I'm a copywriter and course creator. I'm also a video coach for doctors, creating health information for their patients and the public. And I also run workshops about creating health information. And I also am part of PIF, the Patient Information Forum, where we create standards for health information. And I'm also a community creator. So I do look after voluntarily the YouTube Health UK and YouTube Health US communities. And I've worked with the NHS, the World Health Organization. I'm creating a video for them for Antimicrobial Awareness Week, which is in a couple of weeks. And I also own Write Clinic, which is a medical writing company, education company for healthcare professionals and scientists. And I'm also launching Medical Writer Magazine and the International Medical Writing Association in the next few months. So look out for that. All right, so as we're all here today, I wanted to ask you, how do you feel about presentations? So are you kind of towards the left, like me, where I just love them because I love having the opportunity to talk and share ideas and discuss things? Or are you not a fan and it just gives you loads of anxiety and you're more towards the right-hand side? If you want to give a show of hands or indicate in the chat, I'd love to know what you are like. What's my audience like today? So maybe you could say, I don't know, you love them, hate them, or they make you feel anxious. If no one's willing to share, I'll move on. So no worries. Don't like them. Thank you, Kathy. Makes you feel anxious. Always feel anxious. Okay, so we have an anxious about presentations crowd. Interesting. Thank you for sharing that. So I want you to try and think about how you want to feel about presentations. So you probably want to feel less anxious, maybe like you have a more confident smile on the day. Pedro likes presentations. That's great. Thank you, Pedro. We have 1+. So if you want to feel happy or more calm and cool and less anxious about presentations, then hopefully this presentation will help you. Hi, Gaynor. Nice to see you. So here are 4 things you will learn in the next 20 minutes. I'll introduce you to the prepare, practice, perform framework to hopefully make you feel more confident and less anxious about presentations. I'll also give you a few exercises and reasons why you want to use your voice to sound confident and engaging. So when you sound engaging, it means that people are listening to you and they're remembering what you're saying. I'll also give you a few tips on how to simplify your slide deck, and this will apply to any kind of presentation software that you use, whether that is Canva presentations, PowerPoint, or Google Slides, or something else. And I'll also talk to you about some tips to ensure that your audience feels educated and enthusiastic about working with you if that's the goal of your presentation. Or maybe you just want to persuade people to do something differently or introduce them to some ideas that you want them to develop, or maybe just grab that funding that you are looking for your project. So I want you to think about what it means to present something. So if you pretend for this presentation that you're part of a band and you're going to be performing on the stage, you're going to be singing, and you're going to have your fans in front of you. So when you present, it's a great idea to think that everyone is really there, really excited to come and see you, kind of like your world famous band. And that should help you feel hopefully a little less anxious because people are already setting their expectations. They want to see what you have to say. So what you want to find out at the very beginning of your presentation is, what does your audience want and how much do they already know? So give yourself a little bit of a crowd check. So when you go to a concert, usually the performer will say, "How are you feeling, everyone, tonight, London?" Or they'll get you to scream, or they'll get you to get excited. I didn't do that to you today because we're not at a concert, but I did ask you, how do you feel about presentations? So I could get a feel for the room and also tailor what I'm going to say and focus it more about reducing anxiety and being confident. You also want to try and think about what they already know. So what is the knowledge gap you are trying to fill to help your audience feel more confident and learn from you and feel like you really know what you're talking about and then want to talk to you afterwards? How can you help them get that thing? So how can I help you today feel less anxious and fill that knowledge gap so that you feel more confident to present? If you don't know what your audience wants and you don't have an opportunity to ask before the presentation, then it's a good idea to ask on stage, or maybe try to in advance send out some kind of survey and think about what kind of questions you would ask in that survey as well to kind of gauge what they already know. And on presentation day, you kind of want to confirm your findings so that your audience knows that you've paid attention to find out what they want and thought about their knowledge gaps. So another part of preparation is creating a story to keep the audience's attention. So I'm going with the theme here today of being in a rock band and performing at a concert, because you want the idea of enjoyment and fun when you're presenting. And that should hopefully help you feel a little less anxious, because if your audience is your fans, then having that mindset makes you feel like you're going to have a good time. And you also want to research key facts that people will be interested in. So what do you know that people might not know? And I also want you to keep in mind that your common knowledge is not everyone's common knowledge. So what you share is more than likely to be new to them if you're teaching them from a point of zero, especially if they're a beginner. So even if you've just had 1 or 2 years of experience doing something, you'll know more than someone who's had 0 years of experience, which might be the reason why they're attending your presentation. And think about key takeaways as well. So what are the main things you want people to go away with? So for me, I want you to go away with some voice exercises, some frameworks, so the practice, prepare, and perform framework, and also knowing how to engage your audience when you're talking. So you might want to do a bit of a brain dump before you create a presentation slide deck. And that's what I normally do. I just get out my pen and paper and I just write down loads of things that I want to include. And then I use that to then arrange it into a logical order on a slide deck, because you can waste a lot of time making a slide deck very pretty and then forget that you actually need to put stuff into it. So it's important to have the ideas first, and then you can spend time making it pretty and putting it in a logical order because you've done the hard bit. So how can you practice? So I want you to keep in mind that a presentation is a conversation with your audience. So even though you're the only one talking, you're trying to think about what they might be thinking or learning from you, and how you are meeting their needs. So one way I like to do this is to record myself presenting to check that I'm actually speaking in a way that I would in a conversation. So I'm not trying to dictate. I'm not trying to just say, this is it as a matter of fact. I'm trying to involve the audience in some way. So if you record yourself presenting, I recommend using your phone and using the selfie camera, and listen to what you say. Just play it through with just listening. Then the second time, watch everything that you do without the sound, so you can look at your body language. And then third, transcribe everything. So if you want, you can just do your first minute of presentation and see how that goes, because most people remember the beginning and end of a presentation the most. And you want to transcribe, so write down all the words that you say, or you can get AI to generate it. and include all the ums and ahs and any kind of words that you tend to repeat that tend to be your kind of filler words. So sometimes I will say things like, and I try to avoid saying that. And when I was practicing on Microsoft Word, which I'll talk about later, it would pick up every time I would say a filler word. And so when you go through a presentation the first time, you're more likely to be nervous. So don't make your first time the actual presentation day. You want to go through it at least once before that so that you feel confident in what you're going to say. And also you set your own expectations so you know what's coming next, and that can help you be more confident on the day. If you can, present to real people on a video call or in person to get feedback. And these can be people that know something or know nothing about the presentation you're going to give. So before you give the presentation, you might want to give them some context as to who your actual audience will be, because you're not expecting them to be that actual audience. But do set expectations before you present to a real crowd, especially if they don't know the topic you're going to be talking about. But also it's a great opportunity for them to ask questions. So if they feel like you've said something technical and you haven't clarified it, that's a good opportunity for you to go back and improve that slide. So when you're performing, you want to repeat what you practice, but now it's going to be a more refined version, so it feels easier. So that in itself hopefully will help you feel less anxious. And also think about your body language, your facial expressions, your gestures, and your voice. Now, that sounds like a lot to think about, but that's why you have your practice session, so that you can try to nail at least some of those. And as you get better at presentations, naturally, you will start to worry about every single little thing less, and you'll feel more confident. So, for example, I used to not smile as much when I presented, but now I make a real effort to enunciate my words so I don't feel like I'm talking over myself. And I also try to have more gestures with my hands. And I also try to make sure that I have open body language. So I'm not sitting there with my arms folded or with my hand on my face, because that seems like you're really disengaged. So avoid doing that. And also I used to touch my hair a lot or play with my collar. And those are all signs of self-soothing. So those are actually signs to your audience that you are quite anxious. So try to avoid touching yourselves in a self-soothing way. You want to consider pacing yourself as well, so that you have enough time to answer questions at the end, and always follow up with people, especially if they ask a question during a presentation or at the end of a presentation, because it means that they're engaged, they really want to learn more from you. So that's how you can identify people that are more likely to be promising leads in future. So if you're in a band, your voice is your instrument. So how do you use your voice? So we talk a lot each day. We also type through, we type to communicate as well. So if you're working from home like I do, you might not actually get the opportunity to talk to people that much. So practicing using your voice is really important. And you may not have noticed this, but a lot of the video content that you probably watch online, you may be watching it because you like the voice of the person that's speaking, you might like their pacing, you might like their tone. So how are they speaking? And is it friendly or is it really serious? And the way that they talk has emphasis on certain words. Even the construction of the sentence, the way that they say it is very intentional. Kind of like when you're watching the news, you'll hear them say, news just in, someone has won the presidency, and now we're going to go to Simon, who's going to tell us more. And you'll notice that most sentences have a pitch, which is almost a arc pattern. So they'll start off quite low and authoritative, they'll reach a peak in their voice, and then they'll go down because they are finishing that sentence and they're moving on to another point. So you want to avoid a high pitch at the end of a sentence unless you are carrying on to make another point. So for example, if you're reading through a list of bullet points, like if I was to read this slide, I would say, your voice is an instrument. You want to consider volume, Do you start off loud and get quiet? Tone. Are you speaking in a friendly or serious way? Speed. Maintain a consistent pace to provide calm. Avoid a high pitch at the end of a sentence. So I've got very intentional starts and ends to everything that I say. And if it's in a list at the end of each sentence, I want to end on a high pitch because it means that something is coming next. But on the final sentence, I will end on a low pitch because I want to emphasize that that's the end of that section. So now we're going to do some voice exercises, or at least I'm going to do them, and then you can do them in your own time, maybe when you watch back. So there are 3 voice exercises to help. So your voice, your mouth is connected to your face. So you want to think about how you warm up your face. So for that, we do the lemon lion face warm up. So I've got lemon here as my nice prop. So if you were to imagine that you were going to bite into a lemon, it would be very sour and you'd probably scrunch up your face really tightly like this. And you want to squeeze your eyes and squeeze your mouth together and do it as tightly as you can. And then you want to release it as if you've seen a lion. So if you've seen a lion, you'll probably be really scared and you'll go, ah, and you want everything to be the exact opposite, nice and wide. And you want to repeat that movement. So you're kind of contracting and relaxing your face. And we call that the lemon lion face warm up. The next thing you might want to try is using a straw to blow bubbles into a glass of water. So there are 2 types of straws these days. One is probably from boba tea, which is a very popular sweet drink that has little bubbles, which are sugar or syrup filled. And you don't want to use a thick, long straw because this is not going to help to strengthen your vocal cords. So do not use a boba straw or a thick, long straw with a wide opening. You want what I'm going to call a regular, more common straw, which is much thinner and shorter as well. And if you want to really train your vocal cords, what you would do is you'd get an even thinner straw, an even shorter straw, and you want to close your mouth over the straw and blow bubbles into the water at the end of a cup. And you want to make sure that no air is escaping from the edge of your lips and everything is going through the straw. So what this does is it tightens your vocal cords because we usually do not exercise our vocal cords. We just use our voice whenever we need to. We don't really think about it. So if you are trying to strengthen your vocal cords, you want them to be as tight as possible. And it's kind of like when you go to the gym to build your muscles, you put them under strain and then they break slightly, but then they build back stronger. And this is especially useful if you're going to be doing longer talks or longer presentations, or you frequently have to present things. So if every Monday morning it's your job to present something to your team, you might want to consider doing vocal cord exercises. The third exercise is the siren humming exercise. So whenever you hear a police car, you hear the siren. So it goes up and down in terms of pitch. So you can do that with your voice by humming. So you start off low, you go up, and then you go down. So sound like this. And that really helps you with your vocal range. So we often tend to speak probably in the mid to higher range of our vocal range. And we don't really think about the lower range. And the lower range is really important to exercise as well. Otherwise, you can end up damaging your voice, especially at the higher range. So I hope you enjoy doing some exercises. So I'll move on to the next part, which is using an AI presentation or communication coach. So this is when you use a webcam and a mic to record yourself, and it helps you identify filler words like ums and ahs or any phrases that you repeat, for example, like or you know. And it also gives you an idea of your tone of voice. So are you speaking in a monotone way? So are you always sounding like this for the whole presentation? Or are you trying to peak and trough your voice to give some variety? And it might also give you feedback on gestures and eye contact, depending on how advanced it is. So this picture here is the Rehearse with Coach feature, which is on Microsoft PowerPoint that I use, and it's under the slideshow tab. So when I'm practicing my presentation, like I practiced this one earlier this morning, it will say, welcome to PowerPoint Presenter Coach. And then I just click start rehearsing, and then it will record my voice and it will give me little prompts while I'm presenting. So it might say something like fillers, try not to use too many fillers like and it will also tell me about my pace and maybe I'm going too fast. So it will say still a little too fast and it will kind of highlight that to me. And it will also give me a nice one sometimes. It says you're getting better, which is great. That's my favorite one. And then it will give me a summary report like this. So this is my rehearsal report. So it tells me my pace, which is words per minute. So some people who have done famous speeches, especially usually they're people in positions of power like presidents, they'll normally speak about 97 to 98 words per minute, but they'll speak quite slowly because they want to emphasize certain words and certain sentences. And so I tend to speak about 132 words per minute. And I do have filler words, but I did that on purpose because I wanted it to come up on my rehearsal report so I could show you. It also tells me about repetitive language. So am I using a variety of words? It also tells me how original I was. So I avoided reading the slide text aloud, which is good for keeping my audience engaged. So I agree with whoever wrote this for Microsoft. It does tell me that I have low pitch variation, which might make my audience lose interest. So hopefully you haven't lost interest during this presentation. So it's telling me to try and include more variety during the presentation. And I think this one's quite unique. It says inclusiveness. So great job, your use of inclusive language was excellent. So no kind of non-inclusive language, I guess. So, or anything that's a kind of extreme language that might be geared towards a specific group. So if you are using your voice as an instrument and you have your fans in front of you, then your stage is kind of like your slide deck because it's going to be on stage all the time, and that's where people are going to be looking. So to simplify your slide deck, here are just 6 key points that I've put together. So the first thing is have short headings, because having a really long heading can be really difficult to understand, and people are trying to listen to what you say plus look at what you've got on the presentation. So try to use as few words as possible if you can, especially in your heading. And then you want to use bullet points to keep things, again, nice and segmented. We definitely do not want walls of text or full sentences if you can avoid them. If you do use any technical words, make sure you have definitions on screen, because some people may or may not be familiar with what you're talking about, unless you're going to talk about the definition. But it's a good idea to have it there so people can reference it and read it in their own time while you are talking. It's also a good idea to have analogies or a story that you share, because it keeps people engaged and gets the imagination going, and it will probably be something that they remember after the presentation. Try to use easy to understand images or graphs, so nothing with writing that is too tiny or anything that just doesn't make sense, especially graphs that have the X or the Y axis and there's no label on it, because that will just cause confusion. And when people don't understand something, they tend to disengage. So you've lost them for that moment of your presentation. And that's a shame, because you might have said something really important that you wanted them to remember. So overall, you want to include just enough information to make a point on each slide. And you want your slides to support what you say, not really read directly from them. Otherwise, you could just give them the slide deck and they don't need to attend your presentation. And then also keep in mind what the key takeaways are. So when people are attending a presentation, they want to have something that they can go away with and feel like it was worth their time attending. So one of the key things I try to encourage people when they are making presentations is to make it easy to remember. So avoid overwhelming your audience with too much information. Now, I know this presentation is being recorded, so you can revisit it later, but I would have included a lot less text, even less than already there, because I know that you wouldn't be able to review it afterwards. You want to give it a structure with a story or an analogy. So for this presentation, I chose being at a concert and you're the one on stage and your fans are your audience. You might want to share a personal experience. So maybe how you felt before and after and why you are delivering the presentation. So for me, I used to hate presentations, but then I got really confident presenting through actually my video work. And then I decided to just translate those skills into workshops, and then workshops became presentations and activities for people. And also in the beginning, you want to identify some common ground. So what is something that most people can relate to? And so in the beginning, I mentioned that you might be presenting for work or to pitch an idea or to get funding or simply just to show what you've achieved. So some of the time you'll just be presenting yourself because you're trying to sell your services. So maybe you want to present a project or a case study to show how great you are at what you do. So at the end of a presentation, some people miss out this bit, which is making an offer. So if you want to engage your audience at the very end and make them enthusiastic to work with you, you need to make an offer. So you spent time educating them, maybe entertaining them, and maybe persuading them for an idea that you have or to work with you. And you want to think about what you can offer them at the end. So what can you offer them if they want to work with you? And try to open the floor for questions, as I mentioned earlier before, so that you can identify people who really want to learn more from you and you want to connect with them. And share your contact details so people know exactly where to go if they want to reach you. So with that said, now you can ask me anything. I'm opening the floor for questions. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can also email me at hello@virginiachachati.com, or you can check out my website, virginiachachati.com. So yeah, you can ask me questions.
Thank you, Virginia. Oh, we have a question, Erica.
Hooray. Hi, Erica.
Hello. That was really useful. Thank you. I was really interested in the presentation coach. Actually, I haven't come across that. But I'm just wondering, like, I've got an interview next week. I won't be presenting, but is there like a coach I can use where you don't have to do like a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation?
Yeah, there is actually. On LinkedIn, there is an interview coach where you can actually use their AI to, I'm not sure if it's camera or it's audio only, but there is a feature on LinkedIn. Oh, thank you, Christina. So I would recommend you checking that out on LinkedIn. They do lots of like career jobs and support stuff. So the interview thing is something that I recommend to people who are looking to get into medical writing. They're just not sure how they'll perform. So yeah, check that out.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll have a look for that. Thanks.
Welcome. Thank you, Christina. And thank you, Weston. I'll say Weston. Any other questions? It's nice to see some familiar faces as well.
Maybe I'll have a question. Maybe someone is still typing, but I'm very curious. What is in your experience, what is the most common mistake that people make while presenting?
I think when they're nervous, they speak really, really quickly. I do it too. I definitely do it sometimes. But if you speak really, really quickly, it will just go over people's heads, and then you may as well have not said that bit. So I would say try to slow down if you can. And I definitely try to slow myself down as well, sometimes on purpose, because there's a feeling of wanting to just get through it. Christian, you said you speak quickly whether nervous or not. Interesting. I'd say this is probably unwarranted advice, but if you want to work on your pacing, it's really good to record yourself and then don't listen to it the exact same day. Listen to it the next day, because then you will have forgotten what you said. And then the next day you can listen to it with fresh ears, if you like, and kind of think about your pacing and just try to even just slow down a little bit. One way to try and slow yourself down is to try to pronounce your words with your mouth in exaggerated movements. So an exercise for that could be you having a pen or a straw in your mouth and then trying to speak without the pen or the straw falling out of your mouth. Because if you try to talk really quickly, it will become really painful, and you just start to mess up your words. So what I was saying is, if you try to do it quickly, you will start to mess up your words. So the pen in your mouth exercise is quite good. And yeah, watching yourself on podcasts is also a really great idea. So just try not to be overcritical, because you can really dig yourself down into a negative hole, which you want to avoid. But the more you practice something, you will get better slowly. It's just about having patience with yourself. So I wasn't, by no means was I any good at video when I first started. But slowly over time, you layer your skills. It's kind of like a cake. You're probably a little cupcake right now, but in future, you'll be a whole wedding cake. You'll just be amazing, because you'd have built all of those layers and decorations and flavors into how you present.
Oh, we have a question on chat.
Good question. Do you have any tricks to, sorry.
No worries. I just wanted to make sure that if someone is watching the recording later, they will know what we're answering. But please, Virginia, if you could read and answer.
Yes, I'll read and answer it. Do you have any tricks to avoid reading the presentation when you have a bad memory and difficulties to memorize the content? So I would say try to think of the key words that you are going to talk around. So for example, for me, it was prepare, practice, perform. So I know all of the background to just those 3 words, because I've practiced learning what I want to say. So try to give yourself points that you can expand on. So almost like giving yourself the beginning of a sentence, and try to attach something else to that sentence that isn't going to be on screen, but makes your presentation worth listening to. So you're adding to what's already there. It's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. So if you had half the puzzle on screen, the other half should hopefully be something that can be triggered through that first sentence. You can also include images as well. So if you want to avoid having too many words, then images can help to trigger you to remember what you want to say on that specific point. And if you want to, you can try to practice with memory games and things like that. So that can help to build your memory rather than directly trying to remember a presentation. You can try practicing memory games. Practicing your memory recall with games and things. And then hopefully that skill can be transferred to your presentation skills as well. So sometimes learning something from a different angle can help you with something else. So yeah, I hope that helps. Thank you, Gaynor. So the question was, great presentation, Virginia, very informative. Thank you. What is the ideal length of a presentation? So it depends on how big your time slot is. So I would say generally a presentation should be about 15 to 30 minutes long, and then you want the rest to be some kind of interaction or activity if you have like a 45-minute slot or a 1-hour slot, because it can be really hard to listen to someone for a long time. It tends to then just feel like a podcast. So sometimes having little breaks or every 20 minutes or so can be a bit nicer for your audience, because they've got less information to try and process. And some people will come with the expectation that they're going to sit through a 2-hour lecture. So if that's the case, you might want to break that down into kind of 4 30-minute sections, so that you give people a little break every 30 minutes. Because I think there was a study done that says, the optimal length of a TV show or something is between 20 and 30 minutes. And that's because we just find it really difficult to absorb and process more information after that, unless we're well practiced in doing that. So if your audience is a collection of people who can read a book for 5 hours at a time, then you've got more leeway in that sense. You can talk a bit longer and they'll be able to maintain their attention. Yeah.
Anything else? Would someone maybe like to unmute and ask their question? We're welcome to this option too.
No pressure. My room smells like lemons now.
Maybe everyone is practicing the straw and lemon and lion and everything else right now.
Cool. I've really enjoyed presenting today. So thank you for coming. It's been really nice to spend time with you.